And Oliver has come down with COVID.
Oh, no, I didn't. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. So what's happening?
Mr. Dietz.
I can tell you all about it after.
All right.
How many are on today?
18 right now.
Hi, Barry. Thank you for the stern reel. I got it in the mail.
Excellent. I'm happy that it found a good home, Jim.
It's even more beautiful than I remembered.
Well, as long as it's getting used in Alaska, I'll be very happy for you.
It will be in a few months.
Good, when you get released. So you may have to change the clamps.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think they're the same size.
Are they? Okay,
We
good.
have smaller, right on that back rail. They put on a smaller rail maybe for that very purpose.
Hi, Bob.
Oh, hi, Barb.
Hello.
Hi,
Yeah,
Bob.
how are you?
Barb.
How you
Just got
doing this
back from a
morning,
walk.
hon? Huh?
I just got back from my morning walk, so it's like,
Good
woo,
for
here I
you.
am.
You're making me jealous. I'd like to go for a morning walk.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. So, you know, when you have your gloves and your scarf on, you just go, right?
Where the rest of
Yes.
them
Okay, and there's our pilot, Mr. Angeli.
Okay,
Okay, I am going to start if I can get this thing to function. Hang on. Okay, okay, let me go.
the 2 boats going to Alaska.
What we saw yesterday.
Share screen.
Yeah.
Share one.
Mhm.
Okay,
There we go.
from beginning.
Myers Chuck.
Okay. Can you see that, Harry?
Sure can.
Okay, but I'm having a hard time why it's not. Come on. Okay, any second now. Come on. Tell me, Harry, are you seeing just my slides on the side or the whole picture?
I'm seeing the slides on the left and I'm seeing British Columbia on Abacus Part 3 on the
Okay.
main screen.
Okay, I just killed it. I'm going to start it again. It
Okay,
was causing.
that's Crater Lake.
Yeah, that filled the whole screen. Vacuum cleaner. Greater Lake. That thing.
Yeah, see.
Okay,
he's
now
got
we see
that.
it.
He's manipulating.
Was it Roomba?
Start slideshow,
Here we go.
Barry.
Here we go.
Now it's at the bottom.
Okay.
Just slides.
Oh, okay. So you're not.
yeah, we're still getting both, but the slides are on the
The
bottom.
slideshow, Barry.
Oh,
I
you
just
lost it.
stopped it. I just stopped it.
Disappeared.
I am having. I apologize, guys. Just a second. For some reason, my last one here, I am having this giant issue with share screen.
We got 21
sure-
attendees
I
right
knew
now.
it.
Usually just,
Here we go. Thank you. Hang on. Getting close.
That's good.
Operator error.
here we are.
There it is. I think you got it going.
Okay, so here we are. We're going to do the third part of our British Columbia tour, and this started actually with in Anacortes area, and after quite a bit of time, we're now way up into Southeast Alaska. The person you're going to see here a lot is going to be Harry Nystrom, who is on our call today, and Harry was with our trip. So this slide presentation is going to start up in an area called Myers Chuck, which is in the area of Ketchikan. So you can
here's Ketchikan.
you can see as far south as Vancouver, Victoria, and you can't even see Anacortes, but we're way up into British Columbia right now, and you can also see Southeast Alaska. Actually, I was making a comment before of why the border didn't just jut across up there at the top, and that didn't belong to British Columbia, but this is part of the US jutting down into British Columbia. Just an interesting side piece. here is the area that we're going to be covering today. You can see Ketchikan is down at the bottom down there, and you can see all these little inlets. And because many people think as you go up north that you're actually in the open ocean, which you're not, because most of it is all in the back country, in the back winding between these islands. And so it is seawater, there's currents, but you don't have this huge swells that you have coming out of the Gulf of Alaska. But we're going to head up towards Juneau and then around to Glacier Bay, where I'm pointing to right now. So here we go. This is some of the screenshots that are just some of my absolute favorites. I mean, Harry took this picture because he's in his boat of Ann and I, and you can see the ice with this fantastic canyon in the background with water coming down. I mean, as we're traveling up in this area, it's just an unbelievable paradise. The relationship as you're up there, you start to feel how small you are, because everything is so large up there, the mountains, the rocks. So here is Harry's boat. I took this picture of him, just a little bit of an idea of the relationship, because again, these rocks go straight down for maybe another 500 feet, 300 feet, 1,000 feet, who knows, but you're able to literally go right up to the sides of these mountains. Again,
I want to mention that green water is glacier water. It isn't blue like the ocean.
Thank you, Harry. Please jump in anytime that you see I'm missing something. But yeah, exactly, because it's glacier water. Again, these canyons, just endless amounts of beautiful canyons. You can see little spots of snow in the background. I mean, these are all, no people, but it's just Mother Nature in its absolute raw form. So here's one of the first places we arrived, and this is called Myers Chuck. This is a small island area. It's nothing but a bunch of people who fish most of the year, and there's a few First Nation people that live here. It's an interesting little area. So my wife here had to try to pretend like she can make a phone call, because you look at the phone booth and it's got so much moss on it. It's just nothing works. So we went for a hike, and as we're going for a hike, the people in Myers Chuck are very artsy people. And so here, for some reason, they decided to build a spider web amongst the trees, and just something pretty. So we went for a walk, and it's just absolutely magnificent. I mean, you feel like you're in prehistoric days. A walk on the beach around Myers Chuck. So we left Myers Chuck, and a little bit farther north, we came to this area, and it was called Barnoff Hot Springs, and it was on an island called Barnoff. And so our intent at this point was there was a hot springs there, so we thought, okay, we're gonna stop here. We're gonna hike to the hot springs. But Barnoff Hot Springs is nothing more than these houses that the Americans have built right into the hills, and these are mostly fishing places where people go up there and fish at different times. One of the things you see here in the next couple of slides is in Southeast Alaska, which is America, all the houses are built on land. In British Columbia, in these places, all these houses are built on water. It's so different, it flips. So here we are at Barnoff Hot Springs, and there's a few houses you can see in the background where Harry and I have docked, and we were going to spend a couple of days here and have some food and go to the hot springs, do some hiking around, which we did. And it's a shot of Barnoff, but there was no water, so the tides have gone out. But if you look in the background there, you can see a little bit of the water coming down, huge amounts of fresh water. So our intent was to go up there, which is what we did. That's the same picture basically on high tide, where the last picture is on low tide, but Harry's standing at the dock here waiting for a plane that was coming in, because this is the only access again in Southeast Alaska is by water or by air. So while we were there, we had some other friends arrive, and they invited us over to their boat for dinner. So here we are in their boat having an evening dinner, and we decided also to do a little fishing. So here I am with one of these halibut that we caught, which is just on a regular occurrence up there. They call these halibut chicken halibut because of the size and because how good they taste. Usually you want a halibut around the 25 to 30 pound range, maybe 35, but when they get to be 80 and 100 pounds, they're tough to eat, and they're not very good. But on top of that, they're all females when they get to very large, and they're breeding stock, so it's not good to catch. But this size, like the one I just caught, is a good one. So we came back to Barnoff, and we wanted to now go up to see where this water is all coming from. I found this picture on the internet because I was obviously not able to get a good shot of it. On the left side of your picture is the inlet we came into on Barnoff Hot Springs. But what this water that you see here coming down, what this is being fed by is this lake. So this lake is all being fed by ice and by snow, obviously, as the years have gone on, and the overflow heads to the ocean. So it's just huge amounts of water. This is an actual picture of the lake above Barnoff, and it's just a unbelievably beautiful, pristine lake that very few people actually get to fish. So I'm sure the trout in this and the freshwater fish are just plentiful. There's Harry. He had to stand on the only rock that you could stand on, so that you could see the lake. But you could see all the snowfall around it, the streams feeding it, and cumulative is.
I haven't seen that picture for a long time.
So as we're up in this area, we're looking to see where are these famous hot springs. So, well, here are the hot springs on the left side. So for some reason, there is warm water, about 100-degree warm water coming out of the ground. And over the years, they've made these places to swim in. And you can see my wife standing there checking it out, and some other people in the background from another boat who are in swimming in the hot springs. But it's a little sulfury smelling, but it's just really beautiful, crystal clear water.
And it's warm, huh?
I just had somebody trying to get in here, and hang on, okay. So this is the bottom of that waterfall that goes into Barnoff. And my wife and I, Harry took this picture from a distance, so it makes us look like we're in front of this huge waterfall, but it's a large amount of fresh water is coming in. We tried to catch some fish here, but it was not fishing friendly. You basically got wet from the spray more than you did anything else. So that evening, we were about to leave the next day, but we didn't quite understand why all of these fishing boats were coming into Barnoff. Well, we looked at our weather, and it turned out that there was a very large low pressure system coming in over Southeast Alaska. So Harry and I you can see Harry's going, why are these people all packing in behind us? Well, what it is the fishing boats who are out on the ocean, who are fishing, salmon fishing, everything, are all coming into this little area because they want to be out of the storm that's coming in the next couple of days. And so Harry and I got side by side because our boats were fiberglass, and we didn't want to get crushed by one of these large steel fishing boats that would tie up to you, because you have to allow other fishermen or other boaters to tie up. So we're looking, this is Harry and I looking back at what we're seeing. And before we knew it, you could see the whole area just got rack-a-black stacked full of these huge fishing boats. And our little boats became just tiny. But it was just, it would have been crushing to fiberglass to have these guys stack on us. So next to us, there's just a side note. This is a guy we met because we were in this harbor for 5 days because of this storm. And this man here and his wife were from Sacramento, and they built this boat in their backyard in Sacramento and left Sacramento and drove it all the way north. And they're up in Barnoff in Southeast Alaska on this boat. And an interesting group. He was an architect, she was a nurse, and they both quit their jobs after they built this boat and took off. Anyway, it was also the first boat I'd ever seen that had a composting toilet aboard. So, you know, every couple of days he had to take his bucket out of the boat, take it over to land, dig a hole, and put his refuse into that. So as we're going north, this is another area, and this is, you're going to see there's a town called Sitka, and when you look at it from a distance, it looks like one giant island, but it's actually 3 islands. The red arrow that I put there is where Barnoff Hot Springs is, because that's on Barnoff Island. And the blue arrow, what I'm showing you there is a pass. If you follow it through, it's called Perilous Pass. So to get to Sitka, Alaska, if you follow this, it's a waterway all the way through to get into the open ocean and then down to Sitka. So it looks like one island, but it has a waterway through it. So going down Perilous Straits, we didn't realize what perilous meant, except that these ferries are coming at 20 knots, 25 knots, you know, so fast coming at you, and they don't really care about you. And so we're now heading towards Sitka, but you can see the ferries are coming out of Juneau, and they're wanting to go to Sitka. And so it's a little intimidating as you're driving along your boat and see these small monsters coming up behind you on a very quick basis.
Yeah, we're making 8 knots and they're making 20 some odd, right?
Exactly.
Remember that?
Exactly. It's very intimidating because you see them on what's called AIS, your computer first. This a picture I took of this is Sitka, Alaska, 150 years ago, because you're going to see the current Sitka, Alaska. And one of the things, if you look at this picture, on the right-hand side, there is a church, it looks like, but you're going to see it again in modern day. But this is what Sitka, Alaska looked like in the late 1800s. This is what Sitka, Alaska looks like now. It's again just a community on the edge of this island, but it's basically has always lived on fishing, and it's also the port for the Coast Guard. So the Coast Guard keeps everything going there, and fishing gets going, and now cruise ships come into Sitka. So that I mentioned a few minutes ago, there was a church. Well, this is the building that is still here. This is now a historical museum that is in Sitka, in downtown Sitka. As a side, inside this historical museum, there was a very interesting display because we've been catching quite a few halibut. So how did the people used to catch halibut? Well, this is how they did it. They obviously had a floating device with a line down to a rock that was up to what looked like a V, but the V had a hook on it. And then they would put some bait on it so the halibut would come in and they would hook into it. Well, here is the actual one, or the one it actually looks like. You can see it's what the people in that area used to fish with, and it was very effective to catch halibut. It's nothing that anybody uses anymore. Nowadays, there's a picture of one of our halibut. We catch halibut with what's called a circle hook. And it's a very interesting hook because the halibut can't get off very easily. But a halibut, because it has a mouth on the lower side, the eyes are on the upper side, it's hard, I think, for them to see. This is again Anne in Sitka. It's a cute little community to walk around. This is what they call the Pioneer Home, and it's an assisted living home now. It was built in 1930s, and they didn't allow women to come into this facility till 1949. So there was a men's or assisted living or a home for men for many years, old fishermen. This is looking out of Sitka into those islands. Just a beautiful little area. In a typical cruise ship that came in, and you can see their little orange boats. They're shuttling people into Sitka to be able to buy their totem poles and whatever else they want to buy in Sitka. But anyway, it's a beautiful, beautiful area. So we're back in the harbor. There's a gentleman who boaters would understand this, but he's changing his chain, and I couldn't believe what he's doing because chain weighs a huge amount. So he's taking all of his chain off of his boat and he's putting new ones on in a rather precarious situation. We left that area, and we're now in another little community, and this is called Tenakee Hot Springs or Tenakee Springs. It has 130 residents in 2010, and it was originally started in 1910. It's a community where everybody lives on the shore. Again, nobody lives on the water as they do in British Columbia, but they're just eke out this little living right on shore. So all of these buildings are right at the edge, and not a place I'd want to live, but it was just an interesting place. So because Tenakee Springs, if you're going to go visit it, you need to use a restroom. There are no restroom facilities. So here is the little pier that goes out with your restroom facilities. So everything is into the ocean, and the tide takes it away.
Hopefully.
So Tenakee Hot Springs, again, one of these interesting people that live in this very rural environment. They do have electricity, but you can see they're heating fuel, and they live right on the water. Small little houses that they spend their winters in, just an interesting place. I put a couple of these pictures in just to give you an idea. These people in their boats up here, they always have to be able to work on them. And this is what's called a tidal grid. And so when the water is low, when the water's high, the boats come in, they tie onto the side. And then as the tide goes out, when it goes totally out, they have about 4 or 5 hours to paint their bottoms or do propeller work or anything else that they do. But this is the same tidal grid that is showing how a boat can be worked on. Just another spectacular.
It's free also, right?
Thank you, Harry. Free.
It's free. And every time we hauled boats, it cost us a lot of money. So they got to do it for free, but they had to do it in a hurry.
So a lot of people have asked me, how do you anchor? Well, here it is, Ann and I. First thing she has to do is get her pole in the water, but Barry has to go check out what's going on with the anchor because it's blowing a little bit and you can see it's tugging on the chain. So I don't know why it was dancing up there, but, but I was up in the front of the boat checking it out. The other thing is when you leave an anchorage, most people, my wife wouldn't be the normal person. We would have what's called a washdown pump, and she would sit up there as I was pulling in the chain with the windlass and keep the chain locker clean, because as it comes off the bottom, many times it'll have seaweed attached to it or it'll have mud.
Right.
Again, first thing my wife has to do wherever we go is fish. So, barely got the anchor down. First thing she does is get on the back of the boat. She has to fish, which she loves. Again, got an anchor down. Here she is in the dink. I'm going to go. She's got her fishing pole. And, all I really cared about was she had communications because we had that aboard the small boat also. There's your typical halibut steaks that you would get at the end of a day. She'd come in with a halibut and I'd have to fillet it.
I still remember her catching the fish at 2 o'clock and we ate it at 6.
Right, exactly. I
That's
mean,
pretty fresh.
pretty fresh, right?
That's pretty fresh.
This is an old cannery left over, and they obviously didn't pull the poles out, but they used to be a platform here and they'd unload and load things. Another beautiful anchorage as we're going north. You know, some days are absolutely spectacular. Other days are overcast and dreary. Alaska's off and on. But this is my wife wouldn't even get out of our pajamas, you know, just put on something warm just so you get out, put a pole in the water. So here we are now in Juneau. And here in Juneau, this is downtown area, and there is a large, what do they call them? What's the name of that? It takes people up, people from the
Gondola.
The tram? Is that
A tram.
Gondola.
Gondola.
gondola. Thank you.
Gondola, that's a good, yeah.
Okay, and it takes you up to the top of this mountain, which gives you a beautiful view down into Juneau. And so up at the top here, it was just a great area to be able to get an overview of the cruise ships coming in, because these are, you can see them jockeying for space to get unload and load their people, because the places that cruise ships stop is Ketchikan, Juneau, and they allow them off. In Juneau, there is another glacier. This is called the Mendenhall Glacier, and it's one of those glaciers that from a cruise ship they'll shuttle you over here that you can actually see a glacier close up. In Juneau, one of the other things they have here is a salmon hatchery, which I found very interesting, because it was just like, you know, they're raising salmon, they're trying to obviously get the stock built back up. But this is all the salmon who are starting to go upstream through the hatchery, because you could see them there as they go through the hatchery. They're counting them, how many pink salmon, how many coho, how many whatever they happen to be. So the salmon are fighting their way back up into the streams, but they have made this into basically a counting area. And this is how they figure out how many salmon can be caught. And outside of Juneau, there is a little town called Auk Bay. And one of the things you can see Harry there, the old guy's rule T-shirt. We had to go to the local fishermen to ask them where are the best places to go catch halibut, right? Because we're a bunch of neophytes, and these guys do this for a living. And so after you talk to them a while, and you kind of start to find out. And so they gave us all kinds of hints. And one of the best hints that I got was that halibut love to be caught with their own skin, because halibut don't care what they eat. So if you get a halibut, you take the skin, which is very tough, and you use that for bait. So here we are in Auk Bay, and Harry and I are tied up next to each other. But one of the very first pictures you'll see here is of Mr. Nystrom here, Harry actually thinking he can fish. And so Dan put a pole in his hand. Here's what you have to do to fish. And here he's going, how do I fish? How do I fish? So
I'm a good boater, but a lousy fisherman.
Right, within a couple of minutes, he caught his first halibut. Anyway. So we're up in Juneau now, and so we're leaving Juneau, and you can see the red line. We're basically going to follow it up and around, and we're going to be heading up into Glacier Bay now, into also Elfin Cove. The red arrow I put in there was just to give you an idea. All the cruise ships come into this area right here. So when they go to Anchorage, they enter right here into this hole. And you're going to see in a few minutes the pictures of what this area looks like. So we're leaving Auk Bay, and in the background, you can see the Mendenhall Glacier, and you can see Auk Bay, the little fishing community. And so what the guys on shore told us what the best place to go fishing is is a place, this is an area we're heading to called Icy Strait. And in Icy Strait, 250 feet is pretty shallow. So they said, find a hump that's 250 feet, put your line down, and that's where you'll catch fish. So on our way out into Icy Straits, what you're going to see is an endless amount of humpback whales. I mean, everywhere you look, you'll see humpback whales, because this area is just is where they calve and where they feed. It's just a real area of humpback whales. It's again, just the beauty is just staggering. I mean, everywhere you look, there's no big waves or anything. It's almost like you're on a lake, but this is part of the ocean. This is the area called Icy Straits, and like I said, Icy Straits is relatively large. And this is a picture I took off the internet to give you an idea. Where I've got the word Icy Strait is where we're coming in right now, and Glacier Bay will be going up into. But this is an interesting thing. There's a glacier there called Brady Glacier, and it dumps 1.5 times the amount of water that the Mississippi puts into the Gulf of Mexico. It puts 1.5 times that much fresh water into Icy Strait every year from these glaciers that are melting, and it just gives you an idea of the area. It's a fascinating area. So as we're going out into Icy Straits here, and we find the 250 foot mark, and Ann puts her hook down. Like the guy said, we attached a couple of skins of the last halibut to it, and she immediately, right in the middle of this huge bay, hooks onto a halibut. And so we got the engine running. Harry took these pictures. He stopped around us. So Ann has to pull up this halibut. And so, it was just, the guys were absolutely correct. Find the 250 foot mark, put the hook down. You can't even feel the halibut getting onto it, because it's having to pull it up from 250 feet. It's just like a dead weight. And right at the end, he fights a little bit, but anyway, there I am on the back trying to kill this halibut. And we're in the middle of this huge waterway with these humpback whales all around us. So in Icy Straits, there is a place called Hoona. And Hoona is an old First Nation community. Hoona. And First Nation community, and it basically now is where the cruise ships pull their people into. The cruise ships anchor out here, and they shuttle them into these little red buildings, and there are gift shops in there. But Hoona is a very small little fishing community, so we pulled into Hoona, and that halibut you saw Ann catch, there it is again. I'm having to fillet it. And one of the side things about halibut, that I know Bill and the fishermen understand this, but they have lines on them on both sides. And how you fillet a halibut is you follow those lines. It's almost like Mother Nature put a schematic on them on how you fillet them. So anyway, you just cut down one side, turn them over, and find the line on the other side. And you end up being able to fillet the halibut. And that's just the most delicious meat that you can get. Then there's the halibut that we ate a couple of hours later. These are a couple of pictures now going up into Glacier Bay. The day we were into Glacier Bay, this is now going up into it. I mean, it's a fantastic place, but weather is always your enemy some days. So the couple of days we were in Glacier Bay, it was always overcast. Do you remember that, Harry?
Boy, I sure do. A lot of fog.
A lot of fog. And so even on a cruise ship, when they go into Glacier Bay, they make it a big deal always. And it is, if you get a beautiful day, but you can get these kind of days where you miss all the tops of the mountains and it's rough and wild. But that's Alaska. I mean, these are pictures of Glacier Bay, of the winds coming in off the ocean, and it's just raw.
We used a lot of radar, I'll tell you. I remember that, Barry. A lot of radar.
Yep, it was, it's one of those things that just beautiful. I mean, the pictures in the morning, and we spent 2 nights in Glacier Bay. And one morning we woke up and what we woke up to was Mother Nature's treat. I mean, you couldn't ask for a more beautiful picture than that, um, but it's a pig in the poke to be able to see this. This is one of the shots I got of all the humpbacks, because wherever you looked, there were humpbacks breaching. It's hard to put this into picture perspective.
You might want to mention the fact that when we entered Glacier Bay, we had to dock at the entrance and then go through an educational, was it a movie or a presentation by the forest, by the rangers, as to what we could do and what we couldn't do when we're up there. Remember that?
Yep. We had to pay a fee, had to get in, but it was all right. It was no big deal, but they did want you to understand that it's not totally a playground. You should stay away from the whales and things like that.
Yeah.
So after we left Glacier Bay, we're now heading to another little area called Elfin Cove. And Elfin Cove is a little cove right at the entrance where I showed you initially where the cruise ships come in. And this is the place where the pilot boat stays. And so when the pilot boat wants to go out, because every cruise ship comes in, has to be brought in by a pilot boat, he leaves here. And this is a little community. In the wintertime, I think they have 10 or 15 people that live there, but in the summertime, they'll have 150 or so live there. But it's a community just around fishing. So we came into the bay and the docks were wide open. So I pulled in, then Harry pulled in next to me. And it was just a great place. And we first started going, why is it so empty? But anyway, it turned out to be empty because everybody's out fishing. So here is Harry's wife, Pat, and Anne at Elfin Cove, just showing the Elfin Cove Lodge. Elfin Cove on the outside, you saw where the boats were. This is the inside. There's a small cove on the inside. And again, being in the United States, it's the people live on the land, where in British Columbia, they live on the water. These are all houses built right on the edge of the land. So this is at high tide right now. So getting in and out of this little area here was only possible on high tide. So again, this is high tide where you could walk around the community. There was a boardwalk that you could walk all around. Very interesting. This is now a little bit of what it looks like at low tide. So high tide, right? Low tide. So you can see if you needed to get your boat out at low tide, it would be almost impossible. So we walked around that boardwalk, and you can see on the left side of Anne the waterway, and that waterway is when you would come in at high tide. Here it is at low tide. And so, I mean, a 20-foot tide was a normal tide. So you always, everything has to be around tides, whether it's when you take the people out fishing, whether the pilot boat, as I mentioned, who lives there, and he brought the cruise ships in. He had to also know exactly when he could get in or get out. Most of the time he was on the outside. Again, a picture of Elfin Cove on the inside where they would come in. A great fishing spot, and with a walkway. And you can see on the left-hand side that little walkway where the person is standing. Well, here's the walkway at low tide. Right? So extreme tides, but it's the only way. Again, in Elfin Cove, because you don't have a whole lot of facilities for these fishermen, you have these tidal grids again, where on high tide, they attach to it, work on their boats. On low tide, they work on it. So we left Elfin Cove now, and we're starting to head back because the summer's coming to an end. And so this is now starting to head south again. These are just some great pictures along the way as we're heading south. And a typical picture of my wife, first thing, she has to sit in the back and catch a fish. And she was an expert at that. but also she has to figure out where we're going to go next. So this is another great little anchor spot. You can see the snow in the background, but you can feel that it's warm there, you know, so it's very pleasant as long as the wind's not kicking up. Another great little anchor spot. I mean, it got to the point where it was so normal to have these beautiful places. This is her typical place to go fishing with. She would put her kayak in and take off and go fishing. We're just about to get around the end of Vancouver Island, and it gets a little foggy and late in the summer. So in August, so here we are looking for a little place to spend the night. And this is how we have to navigate around with radar and depth and get around these trees. And we're always looking for a place. And we found a place, this little cove. And it turned out after a couple of hours of us, after we dropped anchor, all of a sudden we saw these killer whales come into the cove. And had no idea what this was all about, except that after a while we figured out it was a killer whale mother and her 2 babies, and she was teaching them things, because they spent half of the afternoon just going in circles around the little cove with a mother kind of prodding and pushing the babies, or the small killer whales. I mean, you can see the mother there. I mean, they're spectacular animals, absolutely spectacular animals. And for us to be able to see this behavior was just a treat. I mean, I got so many pictures of their fins. It was just spectacular. So as we're coming back, we did a couple little detours and went up to a place called Roscoe Inlet. And again, it makes you feel so small on the boat, because these granite cliffs are so unbelievably large as you go up these fjords. So we come up to the side of this one mountain, and you can see the trees trying to eke out a living out of the crack and trying to survive. But how close we're able to get, because the water here is very deep. There is a shot from a distance, and it doesn't do perspective. There you
Yeah,
can,
there's no beaches really. I mean, the rocks go right straight down into the water. You can darn near move your boat, take your boat right up almost to the rocks. You can't do that, but you can get really close, because the rocks go straight down, and it's very deep, real close to the rocks.
Yeah, this is a shot, a little distance shot. I was trying to get some kind of perspective on how massive and huge the mountains are. But, you know, it's hard to do that. There's Harry coming around the corner behind me. So it's interesting, these fjords up in Alaska, because the water it has tidal movement, but it's not major. All the water doesn't move out of these fjords. The fjords actually are warm. You'll have it high 60s, low 70-degree water you can go swimming at, which is hard to believe, but you just don't want to hang your feet down very far, because the first 3 or 4 feet is warm, and after that it's in the 40s. So it's or lower, but it's anyway, it made for a great swimming. And Harry, you can see him in the background going, what's he doing? Swimming out there?
Yeah, I didn't go. You'll notice I'm standing on the boat. Barry's in the water. I didn't go in.
Right. Well, you know, I mean, here's the surroundings, right? And so the surroundings are just spectacular. I mean, it's and you're swimming in this, it's just hard to come by. These are just, so this is another little area called Ellerslie Falls. Up one of these fjords we went, and again, just a beautiful little waterfall area, fresh water from a lake coming in. So we had to go over and see what it's all about. So one of the things that we saw here, which I found fascinating, is an old stump coming out of the water with a little tree eking out a living right here. And so this tree, the front side of it looks like this, but the back side is, look at the amount of growth on this tree. And the only fresh water that it gets is from rain, because all the water around it is all seawater. So, I mean, it's unbelievable, the growth, as they say, the flora and the fauna. So I had to go for a quick walk. And again, the water was warm. You can see how close we are to shore here. This is 56 feet deep because I took this picture out of the front of the boat, but we are close to shore because we were looking to see if we could see bears the next day, because that's really what you're in the morning time looking for. But there weren't a lot of rocks, therefore not a lot of bears. So the evening we spent there, we spent it in a place called Beaumont Island. This is an anchorage we had all to ourselves. And about dinner time, I looked outside and it was the most unbelievable sight. This front was moving through this little island right behind us. You could see the rain passing, the clouds being trapped at the top. I mean, it doesn't get more spectacular than this. And this is taken off the back of the boat. And it's our private paradise, and it's called Beaumont Island is what that little
That's the sun. That's the sun shining on that on that hill mountain. Yeah.
Sun just going down. I mean, it's just spectacular. And there's the sun almost gone, but you can see the clouds still there in that little island. I mean, the shots, the evening shots and the afternoon shots, it looks like a lake, but it is all part of the ocean. Typical morning of my wife, waking up, fishing pole next to her, a cup of tea next to her, and so here she is in her pajamas. So one of the great shots is that she used to love to do. She would catch a small rock cod, and so you could see the bald eagle there. And she would always wait for the bald eagles to come in, because a bald eagle has a territory, and in a cove, he becomes the master of that cove. And so when you catch a fish, if you bonk him over the head, a small fish, and then throw it out, he'll be dazed. Well, the eagle sees that. And so the most fun thing to do is to watch an eagle see the fish and make the swoop in, because you can see him. He already saw the fish and threw out, but he's watching. So here he grabbed the fish and he took off. I mean, it's one of those joyous things to be able to do. Another killer whale. Endless amounts of killer whales. We're now slowly heading back across what's called Queen Charlotte Sound, and these killer whales are next to you on a regular basis. And the pictures, I mean, it's hard to imagine how close you are to this wild animal. So we're now arrived in what's called Port McNeill, and unfortunately Jim Caldwell's not on the call because he's skiing in Mammoth today. But this is Jim Caldwell on his boat. He arrived, and so one of the things after Jim arrived, Jim comes over to my boat, and this other guy arrived in his boat. And so in boating, there's a thing called humility, because no matter how big you think your boat is, there's always somebody with a bigger boat. Well, this guy came into this harbor. And this man, after we found out who it was Larry Silverstein. He owned all of the leases on the World Trade Center tower buildings in building 1, building 2, building 4, and building 5. And so anyway, he was up there on his boat cruising around, but he's tied up to the same dock we're tied up. He's going to eat at the same restaurant we're going to eat at. And but anyway, the interesting thing is that Jim is standing here, and he's pretending as if he's going to make a difference, trying to ask this guy, would you like me to use my fender to fend you off? But there's Jim standing there. It was just a comical picture. So again, in Port McNeill here, this is how the guests would get in and get out. A seaplane would land and would come in and would offload or unload people. So here we decided, Ron Herrerius was with us for a short period of time, and he wanted to do some crab fishing. So here, Ron and my wife have put down a crab pot. That yellow thing in the background you can see is a crab pot. It's been out there about 5 or 6 hours. And so Ron and Ann went out to go see the crab pot. And so there's a picture of Ron, obviously, but interesting. See, look at the eagle in the back. He's sitting on that branch. Right. And again, like I said before, all the little coves are all guarded by one male eagle. I mean, they're very territorial. So this was his area. So after us bringing back our catch, which were Dungeness crabs, because you can catch those on a regular basis, as many Dungeness crabs as you want. This is Ron and I sitting on the back, having some snacks and eating as much fresh Dungeness crab as we want. So as we're leaving, we're heading over to another one of these. We're back in British Columbia as we head back home. And you can see now in British Columbia, the housing is on the water. This is a community called Sullivan Bay. And this whole community is built on the water. So they have a golf course here. So if you want to play golf, you can do a chip shot out to that floating device out there. And if you get a golf ball into the center of it, you win some money or something. I don't remember. I'm not a golfer, so I didn't try it. But Eric, I know, would do well on this. Oh, sorry, wrong direction. So Sullivan Bay is, again, because they live on water, it's all sitting, the housing is all sitting on top of these pilings. And so you can see many of them are 40 and 50 years old, rotted, and other trees are growing out of the rotted trees, but the buildings are still sitting on top. Just another beautiful shot I saw off the side of a building, the rotted wood underneath, the petals. Anyway, just a pretty shot. So here's one of these cliffs that we wanted to go fishing on. And there's Ron in the background, obviously trying to outdo my wife to see who could catch more fish. But there's Ron's fish, which is a very nice rock cod, very nice. So there's my wife's fish she caught. That was also a rock cod, but this is a very old rock cod. It's, again, we didn't know as we go along how old these guys are. These big rock cod like this can be 30 and 40 years old, but they're delicious to eat. Again, another anchorage, because that was our favorite thing to do. Just second to none. We're now in a little town called Soyantula. This is on our way back. We just stopped there for a second. I'm still using a flip phone because that was the days of flip phones. So we stopped also at a place that you saw maybe in the second presentation. This was called, there are these floating communities up there, and this was Pierre's. And Pierre right there, he was famous for doing what are called pig roasts and prime rib roasts. So we arrived on a day when he had a pig roast. And so he was getting this ready for all of us. So in the evening time, you give him $20 and you bring your hors d'oeuvres and your secondary things to eat, but he provides the pig. This is the other thing he provides is more prime rib than you've ever seen and can eat. But this is his prime rib after a day on his barbecue. There's Pierre getting the prime rib ready. And so he'd feed as many people as would show up. And many times you'd have 50, 60, 70 boaters come from as far away as for Pierre's evening get together. I mean, there's one of the meals. As we're heading back, this is one of the communities that the Canadians built, and this is on an island, and it's called Sonora Resort, and it's a beautiful first-class resort. If anybody ever wants to go up to that area and be first class, this is Sonora Resort, but it's remote, and you got to fly in or come in, but it's one of those few places that you can see. So Sonora Resort, you can see in the background, we ended up stopping on the other side, which was the less expensive side to spend the night. But anyway, it was another great place to go fishing here. So as we spent the night here, it obviously rained, didn't catch a lot of fish, but we did have hamburgers. So after leaving Sonora Resort, this is another just going up in one of these little inlets. It's just as we're heading back home, they're just evening after evening of just spectacular outlets and inlets. And that's the end. I could keep going, but we've run out of our hour. So I appreciate everybody being here. We stop sharing.
Yeah, that was good, Barry.
Very good. Good show.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Brought back a lot of
Thank you.
memories.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
Bye,
Hey,
Tuesday
thank
hiking
you.
group. I won't be there this Tuesday.
Oh,
Well, Jim, you're gonna have, this is what you have to look forward to.
It looks pretty cool.
yes.
Barry, what months were you up there? When did you leave in?
You should leave in mid-May.
Yeah.
And you want to get back out of Alaska before the middle of July, early August, because by August it starts to get foggy, very foggy.
Yeah.
And then you start missing everything. I mean, there was a time when Harry and I mean, we got into fog different times when you couldn't see 5 feet in front of you.
Wow.
But then
Barry?
you're looking for an anchor spot with your radar, right?
Right.
What was, when you're in Glacier Bay, Barry?
Yep.
Where was the ice? I didn't see any pictures of ice.
Well, it's interesting. They make a big deal out of the ice. You don't see much ice up there, right? Glacier Bay there are glaciers, right? But the glaciers are all dripping water into Glacier Bay. It's all going into the Glacier Bay. But there's very little floating ice in what's called icy straits, because those are big navigable waterways. And the cruise ships normally don't have. They're not there when there's any break off. I mean, it's not like going up to Tracy Arms, which is what I had in the second presentation, and Sawyer Glacier and those glaciers where you can get really close to them and you see the ice. But
How are your boats? What's the difference between your boats? Are they pretty much the same?
yep, Harry's boat is exactly it's a sister ship, right, Harry?
Right. Mine was built in 2000 and yours was in 1990. They were only 3 years apart. But they were identical almost down to the engines were the same. Everything was the same, pretty much the same boat.
We've been into Huna twice, and the first time they had just opened it, and then the second time they had the big pier built. But the one time we were one of the last people to get back on the ship, and we were walking with another couple, and we heard this big whoosh, and we looked out in the bay, and what we had heard was the actual whale blowing out there. I had never heard that before, and it was just like, of course, we were almost too late to get back on the ship, but that was okay.
Truly, that area, Icy Strait, is just, I mean, it's just so many humpback whales. Yeah,
Thank
You
That
ever
was
see the
wonderful.
humpback whales do the,
Jim,
what do they
take
call
care.
that? Barry, you know, the
Take it.
humpback whales where they do the circling, the bubbling and stuff like that?
Have I actually seen it? No, not live. I've seen many pictures of it, but I never saw it live.
Because when we were there at Huna,
Uh-huh.
and they took people out to see whales, and we talked to this one couple, and they actually said they saw that happen
Yep.
while they were on the whale excursion. You know?
Yep, it's one of those things. It's so spontaneous because the whales are circling and blowing bubbles to drive the bait up, and then they come up with their bows. And yeah, it's one of those things you have to really. It's like anything, you have to be there at the right time.
Right.
But it's
The other man that had the pictures, he had some really good pictures of it.
Oh, that was last week.
that was
Yeah.
Bill Phillips.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Barry, what's the next show? What's the next travel show? This is better than Travel Station. So what's the next show?
well, Erica's going to do the next one. Then I'm going to do one after that, and I
Okay.
was going to do Southern
There's
Tide.
his picture. He's showing the picture.
There's Bill's picture. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a phenomenal thing.
Okay.
Well, so Barry, am I up for the next one?
Your batter's up. It's you, Eric.
Okay, so I thought I'd kind of change it a little bit, and so I'm going to do Southwest England.
Oh,
Excellent.
Okay.
So
I think
the
you'll
area
like it.
that's on lockdown now.
Oh, no, that's southeast England.
We're
However,
We're all locked down, Eric.
we're all locked there.
now, that's
Well, so are we here.
Cornwall, which you're talking about, I think is still in tier 2, but basically, more or less, the whole of the UK is virtual lockdown now. There
Yeah.
are the Scilly Isles of Cornwall is the only one in tier 1. I think Tom will confirm Scotland's totally locked down. Is that
Yes,
right, Tom?
the whole of Scotland except the Western Isles are all in lockdown. You
Yeah.
cannot even go into the next county. You're
No.
breaking the law.
You can't even go in. You've got to stay in your
Go
own
in
bubble.
once, go in once and they fine you £60. Go in twice,